Hi, my name is Soile, and you're listening to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. So, today's episode is going to be a little bit different, but I hope you take time to listen and maybe think about your own situation. This is a video I've been thought about doing for months now, but I thought that I would wait until the season had ended so it would have more room to kind of exist in this platform. Almost 2 months ago, I made the following post. For an upcoming theme episode, what Heartland storyline around hurt or mental health issue has touched you the most out of all? If you feel comfortable explaining why, feel free to share that too. What helps you when you're going through hard times? And I really wanted to talk about this because overall I think it's a very important topic, and I think it is closely tied to the show and the fandom because I've heard a lot of stories about how the show has helped people with their struggles or offered them an escape from whatever they're going through at the time, maybe even help them deal with some of the issues they're dealing with by seeing that reflected on screen. So today we're going to talk about mental health and our relationship to Heartland in a way that affects our mental health for better or for worse. So first, I'm going to read some of the replies to that post that I made on Instagram. And I also wanted to thank everyone who replied for opening up and sharing their story, because I believe that whenever we talk about these things, it helps us not only understand ourselves, but each other as well. To see that someone else might be going through the same thing that you are, I feel like that helps a lot in cases where you feel like lonely, or maybe this is like stupid and maybe no one else has ever thought of these things or whatever. So thanks for all of you for sharing all your stories, and I hope that this inspires conversation between you and other people and maybe allows you to stop and think, how are you feeling at this moment? So the first comment comes from Bex211. Well, you know my story. The show hit home to me in season 10 when Ty was diagnosed with pneumonia and sepsis. I lived the exact scenes with my husband, although my husband did not recover when he went into cardiac arrest, which then brings us to season 14 and the loss of a spouse, your soulmate, and one true love. As difficult as it was to watch these episodes, it was also very healing. The writers did a great job, and I can't say enough for Amber's portrayal of a grieving widow. I could feel and see every emotion in her acting, and I can say from experience that it is real. Losing my husband at 31 years old and having young children, my life was turned upside down. I truly appreciate the storyline as it was real life for me. The guilt is real as you move forward. It's been 20 years for me, and I still feel guilt, but I know that moving forward is part of life and what my husband would want. I feel that Heartland is doing the same with Amy, and this makes me smile. So thankful for this show for many reasons. Then No Context Heartland said, one that springs to mind immediately for me is Georgie's eating disorder storyline. I am not super happy with some of the things that they did to wrap it up. They got so close to really addressing it, and then it's almost like the writers changed their minds, blamed it on severe stress, and had her healed up by making some chicken noodle soup. But the builds and hints and the pressure she felt was something that really struck a chord with me as someone who has struggled with body image for most of my life. I would also say season 14's portrayal of grief and the way that all the different family members handle it separately was really well done. The ones that I found the most touching for myself personally were Tim, anger and need for a sort of justice, and oh God, the scene knocking down the house, and Lou, throwing herself into work and her engagement, needing a distraction, not being able to really acknowledge it, or she'd break. To which Sharon commented, they had a chance to really deal with this in a responsible way, but I feel like they let the fans down on how it was wrapped up too neatly. To which No Context Heartland said, agreed, felt let down by the resolution of that plot, as I had hoped they would do more with it. Then Heartland Lisa BFC said, totally agree on the Georgie storyline. They had the opportunity to do a really powerful storyline, but wimped out of it. And then Heartland Lisa BFC said also, Heartland has always been my escape from my life. It's so different to my life on the whole, it was like my medicine to deal with the hard days of life. Slightly off topic, as it wasn't directly about hurt or mental health, there was one episode where my escape from life entered my reality. Most people won't take much notice of it, but there were elements that I related so much to, so it hit home. Season 11, Episode 7. Seeing Grayson have his struggles and them putting a strain on his parents' relationship and life is something that I resonated with. Watching Grayson struggle socially is my son's day-to-day life. Watching him have areas of extreme knowledge and interest is also the same for my son. The topic of autism is close to my heart and part of my daily life, so to see it portrayed on screen was bittersweet. Autism really can affect the mental health of the whole family who live with the struggles and effect of autism. I think seeing Mackenzie and Ian's struggle showed that, as it would for sure affected their mental health in doing the best for Grayson. But thinking your best isn't working or good enough. Autism is real and the struggles that come with it are also very real. To which wannabe cowgirl said, thank you for sharing. There are so many people who can relate to your struggles. Sharing helps them know they are not alone. I think Heartland does a wonderful job in bringing current issues to light in their stories that help us all in whatever we are struggling with in this life. I also think that is why Heartland is so successful, because the stories help us see we are not alone. All can deal with the situation by. Then HL Horses said, right now, I can't think of any other applicable storylines that fit this prompt besides the one they did very wrong, except the picture you posted, so I'm just going to comment on that. I posted a picture of Amy crying against Jack from the season 14 premiere. I probably would have commented on it anyway, but so I was never a huge Ty or Tammy fan, so Ty's death didn't affect or devastate me personally, even though I did feel for the character of Amy and the family, since no one should have to go through a loss like that. I also have never gone through a loss like that, so I can't relate personally, but I thought the storyline about grief for Amy and the rest of the family was very, very well done. They pretty much addressed every character's grief about Ty, with the exception of Georgie, but she left for the most of the season. And they did it very well. They also had good callbacks to things Ty related to. I think this is one of the best types of these storylines Heartland has ever done, and even though it doesn't personally resonate with me, I always appreciate a good storyline. I also just thought of this, but even though we haven't gotten a ton of info about Tim's drinking and drug stint or his mental health surrounding it, I feel what we have gotten over the course of 16 years has been really good, and the growth that Tim has shown as well. Then SBN Lover 61 said, Jack's sorrows are the ones that touch me the most. Payne's death, the pain he tries to hide when he fixes the Norton, it breaks my heart. Then Demo Den Costa 85 said, Heartland is one of the very few shows that I watch. To me, it's just a show that I enjoy watching, and that's it. I know that Ty's death affected a lot of people, and some are still upset that Graham left, but to me, it's just entertainment. It's fiction, but it seems some can't separate that. Then Sharon said, I found Heartland in 2020 after a year of feeling inadequate, useless, and unwanted. Heartland lifted me and relaxed me and helped to stop the negative thoughts I was having. Starting to deal with the grief of losing my mom, who was also my best friend, I totally emphasized with all the characters in season 14. I love to watch the early seasons when Lou and Amy were closer. They always made me smile. So if I'm having a bad day, I go to the episode of Mixtape. It always makes me laugh. Then Wannabe Cowgirl said, "We can deal with the situation with love and kindness towards each other." Then Alberta Dreams commented, "Yeah, the death of Ty and Amy's pain has definitely been the hardest for me because with Ty being gone, an important part of the show has died too. We grew up with the show and thus with Ty and his role. It was like ripping out a piece of our hearts. Furthermore, Amber played Amy's struggle and pain really well and convincing. Plus, the entire season was rather dark and sad, and every one of the characters suffered somehow. You just feel with them, and for me personally, it definitely took some time to recover from that. Another storyline that touched me, and this was probably the first one that made me cry, was Pain's passing. I watched that episode around the time we had to let go one of our horses, so this just made me very emotional. The scene with Conrad Lawrence's quote as a gift for Jack was just very beautiful. Then someone who wanted to remain anonymous sent me a message. "Hey, I thought I'd send in a message for your mental health theme episode coming up. The episode that really struck a chord with me was season 3, episode 2. The one with the little girl who was making her horse bolt so her parents would stay together. She ended up seriously hurting herself when the horse bolted. The part that resonated most with me was when Amy was chasing her and they ended up just talking. Amy said she would look after her horse while the little girl got the help she needed so she wouldn't do such drastic things to cope in a situation she couldn't control. I have mental illness and have needed to get help before, and I couldn't look after my horse well. It made me cry to see that Heartland actually touched on a serious mental health issue and getting professional help. Amy knew she couldn't fix them and encouraged the girl to get help. Another storyline was Andrea's mental health and being unable to care for Luke. I kinda hated how Heartland dealt with it though, because it made Andrea out to be a bad mom when she was actually a brilliant one. She couldn't take care of him and put him in foster care with a good family while she got the help she needed to get better. I hated how Amy and Ty didn't trust her, but again, I was surprised Heartland would even touch on an actual mental illness. That was all the comments. Again, thanks for those. So, as you heard, the show has touched many fans. Like, those were just really small part of the stories behind the people who watch the show. But the show has touched so many fans all over the world and helped them see themselves in the show. And I just think with that comes responsibility. I think they've done a great job with some of the storylines around mental health, but I think there is definitely room for improvement there. And I hope that in the future, if they're dealing with something like that, they would remember that this isn't something they should take lightly, maybe even talk to professionals about how some things should be presented on the show. I'm hoping that Heartland continues to be a light for so many of you and tell stories where you can see yourself in or feel comforted by, even if they feel hard to watch. You know that when you're watching them, you're safe and someone sees you. Overall, if you feel like you're struggling with something, you need help, I just want to say that there's no shame in asking for help. I know sometimes you can feel like a burden to other people, but I assure you that everyone who loves you would rather hear what you're going through than not know what you're dealing with. I'm sending you love and care if you're struggling with something, and just know that you're not alone. So next I'm gonna talk about something more personal, and I've been trying to think how to do this because I always wanted to keep this podcast about the show. But at the same time, this is my relationship with the show and the fandom and my part in it. So I guess it's still fitting. And also, if you follow my blog on Tumblr or my Instagram on Heartland Live, you know by now that I'm taking this month off. Now, obviously, this episode comes out this Saturday, but for the month of March, I've tried to sort of coin it as Mental Health March because I've noticed that I need some kind of break. And it's not simple. I'm fine, but I can feel that I'm overwhelmed. And so I'm trying to explain it a little bit more. At first I was like, who wants to hear this? Just say you need this month off. But then I thought maybe it could help someone to hear these things. Maybe it helps them to realize maybe they need a break too. So this is why I'm talking to you right now. I've always wanted to keep this podcast as this kind of like conversation between friends. I feel like this fits into that category as well in that way, a heart to heart. So yeah, I hope you stick around and hear what I have to say. And if not, I'm not taking that personally. And just know that I will be taking some time off, but I will be back at some point, and I hope to see you then. So, about 12 years ago, I became a fan of the show, and it was just one of those things that I sort of falling into because I was bored. And it really took a hold of me very quickly after discovering it. Back then, the fandom was very different. There wasn't that many people, but there was a lot of passion for this show. It was during season 4. So the next year, around the time season 4 ended, in March, actually, I started my blog. So that was 11 years ago. And back then, I just wanted something to do, a hobby of sorts. I started creating edits from screen caps, and I started doing music videos from clips and all that kind of stuff just to kind of keep myself creative. And it was really fun, and it always gave me something to kind of work on to balance everything else that was going on with my life. So when I started my blog, I had this idea like I wanted to post something every day. And it started with, one edit, then it grew into like a couple more edits. Like, whenever I felt like editing, I would do edits and all that. And it just became this habit of mine. So the slogan for my blog was your daily dose of CBC's Heartland. And that was always kind of the goal for me with my blog. As the show's success grew and social media became a thing, I thought, hey, why don't I, add this element of keeping everyone up with the news around Heartland? When the new season is coming, what's going on set and all that kind of stuff. Things that I could find. My mentality is often kind of obsessive. It sounds maybe worse than it is, but posting about Heartland was almost like collecting hockey cards or Pokemons or something like that. So it became this like scavenger hunt for everything that I could find about the show. But as social media grew, I felt more pressure to kind of have everything posted on my blog. So I had to find the newest stuff. I had to keep everyone up to date. I wanted to be active. I wanted to bring something fresh every day. For the longest time, I think that was fine. I was able to do that and it was fun. But the more internet kind of grows, the social media scene grows, the articles are spread across platforms, it became this sort of not like a burden, but like a bigger challenge. None of this was my actual job. I did this because I enjoyed it and I loved Heartland and I loved sharing these things with others and I loved seeing other people happy when they discovered these things. But the fact of the matter is that I have an actual job. I've been able to balance it kind of nicely, but I feel like the more time goes on and having this pressure to keep up with all the new things, being this person in this fandom, it sort of started feeding stuff to my anxiety. And I suffer from anxiety from time to time. It really depends what's going on with my life. Funnily enough, today, when I got off from work and before I started filming this episode, I felt that I was close to having a panic attack. I was able to contain it, but I know that I can do it only for so long. I feel like these past 3 years almost, it's sort of become heavier and heavier. This like feeling of having to do this, having to be up to date, having to be online every day almost. And it's just like the fandom has shifted into something that I no longer really recognize. And what I mean by that is when I started blogging, the purpose of the fandom and being part of the fandom or following the cast or the show's social media was to share love and excitement and just things that you enjoyed about the show. And I guess part of that shift is that the world has also shifted. People are struggling and they're trying to find ways to, put it out there, vomit it on other people. They start looking for negative things. They start picking fights, inserting their comments where those comments shouldn't be in a way. I've really noticed that kind of negative turn in many ways and how it affects me, how I'm expected to have an opinion about certain things and how I'm asked to feel certain things about some parts of the show or the fandom or the cast or whatever. It's been hard for me because my focus has always been to love the show. It's never been a perfect show. I don't think it's as good as it could be, but I still love it. It's still something that inspires me and connects me with some of my friends that I've found through the show. But some parts of fandom are just something that I don't really know how to deal with, especially having anxiety about these sort of things. So I've tried to sort of found a way to balance that, to be in the fandom and sort of put blinders on. I stopped going to Facebook because the comment sections were just out of control. I stopped going to Twitter because there was so much negativity there. So I sort of try to stay in this like my own bubble. My blog, my Instagram account, this podcast. But I felt this like disconnection in a way from things other people were talking about and bringing to my attention and just, going forward with my blinders on. I've noticed that I haven't really dealt with everything that has happened in my personal life these past 3 years. And some of the feelings that I've had around the fandom, I've just gone forward. I've worked on the podcast and just try to stay in my lane. Sometimes there have been things that have been said about me that have made me feel upset, but I've been able to kind of shrug off eventually. But it's hard to kind of with that obsessive mentality to kind of stop and rest almost. I've noticed I haven't been bored in a long time, which may sound like a good thing, but For me, it isn't, because that's where my inspiration usually comes from, everything that's creative. And sometimes, it's just good to be not productive. Just be and rest and allow yourself to recharge. For a while now, I've started to take steps back, like I said, with the Facebook, Twitter, and not looking into Instagram comment sections that much. And I've also tried to post less on my Tumblr and try to steer away from some conversations because I don't feel comfortable in those situations. But I feel it still isn't enough. I still feel this pressure to keep up with the schedule. Post something on Instagram every day, post on my blog or cue things for my blog every week, and do this podcast. While it's fun, it's also a source of stress for me because I have my job and in my life outside all of these things. I feel like I've sort of put myself in a corner. I constantly think about everything through this like Heartland lens. Oh, what am I going to post tomorrow? Or what am I going to cue things for when I'm away for a couple of days? Am I able to put out fan fiction chapter this week? All of these things. I love the show. I love expressing myself through the show. I love being creative through the show. But I'm scared that if I do this too long like this, I will lose that connection to the show and I will lose that creativity that I've gotten through the show. And eventually I had to tell myself that you need a break. It's nothing to do with the show. I still love the show. I look forward to seeing new episodes and new updates and everything like that. And when I say it has everything to do with fandom and with my mental health, it sounds worse than it is. I do love parts of the fandom, but some parts right now just feel kind of hostile, something I don't want in my life. And then my mental health, all these things sound kind of light when you put it like this, but I assure you that when you are not getting the rest mentally that you need, all these little things start to feel big. And because these things are something that I've created for myself, these struggles, in some ways as well, I feel like it's my job to kind of undo them as well, which is why I'm taking a break. And if you like this podcast, you might be wondering, like, well, is this going to be the end? No. But the podcast might look or sound a little different in the future. I don't know what that means yet, but I'm hoping that if I take this time off and sort of take away all the responsibilities I've created for myself around the podcast, I'm able to kind of pick it apart and see the things that I do think are manageable for me. Maybe things change with my blog as well, my Instagram, whatever. I'm trying not to take too much pressure of that, but I know that I don't want to deserve this fandom yet. Like I said, it's been a great comfort for me. It's been a great distraction sometimes, and I still love the show. So I don't want to give it up. I don't want to just leave and disappear. But I just need a break. I encourage all of you to always listen your body, your mind, and take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, no one else will do it for you. And whatever things you think are important, they won't matter if you don't take care of yourself. They might sound big in your head, but sometimes those things are smaller than you think. You just need a little distance to see that for yourself. I also want to remind everyone that you never know what someone is going through. You never know how they might feel about certain things. And maybe those things seem small to you, but you don't really know what's behind all of those things, just how well the person is feeling. So I encourage to be mindful with others and look after yourself. And if you need help, ask for help because we all need help sometimes, and there's no shame in that. I hope that explains a little bit what's going on with me right now and what's going to happen with the podcast. I'm okay. I know I will be okay. I just need a little rest. I don't want to turn this fun thing into something that doesn't feel like a nice thing anymore. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say today. And not to leave you with a completely weird note, I've also been meaning to do this giveaway because this month the podcast turns 2. So I'm doing a little giveaway when I come back. And that itself should be a promise that I will come back. But we probably won't be seeing each other for a while. Obviously, if you follow me on Instagram or whatever, you can always come and talk to me. But I've been trying to spend a little less time online because I don't think we as humans are equipped to handle that constant stimulation and feed into our brain. We need to go out sometimes and just take breaks, talk to other people, pet animals, enjoy the nature, watch shows and just get bored. And I encourage you to do that as well, because while social media can be great, there are other ways to connect with other beings, other ways that can be even more meaningful. I just wanted to do this episode so that you know where I'm at, but also that you know that everyone is going through something sometimes, and it's completely okay. It's just for now. Nothing lasts forever, for better or for worse. So until next time, keep your noses clean and your powder dry, as they say. Bye.